The movie begins with a young woman dancing around her bedroom in a dress she made. She's listening to some old records while she packs a suitcase for fashion school. She lives in a small country home with her grandmother, and she talks like a mouse. So how does a girl like this become capable of this? Ellie is innocence personified, and her grandmother worries that the city will eat her alive. Edgar Wright and Krysty Wilson Cairns wrote a screenplay that made me examine all the little interactions that as a man I wouldn't think twice about, because most men have never experienced them. As a man I go about my day, and the thought of physical violence rarely enters my mind, so I can only imagine what goes through a woman's mind during every interaction with the opposite sex. For instance, look at this interaction with the taxi driver. The conversation is ordinary enough. Where are you from? What do you do? What are you studying? Then the conversation turns suggestive. Now it's important to note that on the surface, this isn't a crime, and to some, this might be flattering. If this were a young man and an old woman, it wouldn't have the same impact. The scene would probably be funny. Most guys experience these kinds of things often enough that we would just laugh it off and move on. Because even if it's an uncomfortable situation, there isn't really a sense of danger in the compliment. But this cab driver says something about her having nice legs and she's visibly uncomfortable. Then he goes on about all the other girls in town that he drives and how she'll probably see a lot more of him. Then to make an awkward situation worse, this savage tells her she may have just found her first stalker. She just got to the city and this is the first fucking guy she meets. Something I have a great deal of experience with. Being a black guy at night. Now hear me out. I'm not saying this to upset anyone. I'm not trying to minimize their struggle. But not everyone wants to do you harm. Some people do, and I realize it's not always easy to tell the difference. But the assumption that men are inherently predatory, or that we have ill intent because we said hello? I was walking around my apartment complex one night at about 10 p.m. I'm walking towards the parking spots, but I'm still in a well-lit common area, and I'm smoking a cigarette. At the same time, there's a young woman coming from the parking lot wearing a work uniform, carrying some groceries and paper towels. We make eye contact, not for a long time, but long enough that I felt a little uncomfortable, so I said hello. This woman freezes and dropped her paper towels as if I startled her. There's about 20 to 25 feet of space between us, and I'm moving at the speed of a 90-year-old that needs a walker. So where's the threat? Anyway, I could tell that she was scared, so I turned and walked in the opposite direction, but I was annoyed that a neighbor would make that assumption. Like, bitch, you fucking swear.
Like twice. Well, like the same guy, but like two separate times. Yeah. And yeah, he was Irish. Yeah. And I don't know, I kind of feel like I kind of get the culture. And that's how
Watch it, man, boys.
I just love Ireland. Like, he literally
Excuse me, miss. My dick just died. Can I bury it in your ass?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, you should try that line on Eloise. Bet she's complete filth once you get a few drinks inside her.
Okay. Oh, come on, play the game.
Situations like this are closer to the reality of what dating is like for young people. This guy is obviously an idiot. But let's be honest, most of us were. This kind of pickup line is so commonplace that she basically ignores it, but then encourages him to try it on Ellie. She never fully condemns the behavior, so what message does this send to a guy like him? His actions are mostly harmless, and the only damage being done is to his reputation. Guys and girls like this definitely have their purpose in the dating world, but it's never more than one night. The context of the scene is important because it highlights the participation of men and women in these sorts of behaviors. For him to confidently approach a group of women and say something like this, he must have thought this tactic could work. And for him to tell Ellie to play the game, we know it has worked before. Meaning he's done this to some other girl, and she probably thought he was goofy, but not so goofy she didn't say yes. This is low-hanging fruit as an observation, but it's also the viewer's first hint to what's really going on in this story. The mirrors tell us everything. Who and why. Who? At first I thought of the mirrors as Edgar Wright putting us into the victim's shoes, but now I can only see it as the film's biggest red herring. Once the first murder happens, the movie drops the mirrors almost entirely. The table's already been set. Ellie spends the rest of the movie running from ghosts, trying to solve the mystery of Sandy's murder, but the viewer doesn't realize that Edgar just told us. We're too invested in justice for Sandy that we don't realize these were Sandy's ghosts all along. Why? Sandy being murdered is only implied. We never actually see her being stabbed. Every time we see her after the killing, she's surrounded by gray, faceless ghosts. But she's in full color in present-day Soho. Another hint that she's still alive. The mirrors are a tool to create empathy in the audience for Sandy. A reflection that shows us that any one of us could be a killer. Stories like Sandy's are a very common trope in movies about fame, and she wouldn't be the first character to lose her shit from this kind of trauma. But let's not let her completely off the hook. Let's not forget about this guy.
I reckon you're a copper or something.
Do you now? Lindsay offered Sandy a way out all those years ago. Sure, she might have died if she took it, but it was a better option than killing Jack. She could have been done with that life after she killed him, but she chose to stack bodies in her walls instead. Her transformation was complete.
I wasn't gonna let this city break me.
So the lesson, for all you players and pimps, be careful where you stick it and treat them right, because one night of fun lets them in close enough to kill you.
Love is just like a